What's up guys, Blitz here today bringing you another video. In today's video I want to dedicate the topic to something we briefly talked about quite a few times, and that is co-op in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 and how it could work. There are multiple characters we can control in Final Fantasy VII Remake, but of course the system is currently designed to work around solo controls using an AI to move your teammates around, which can be frustrating at times. There are of course some AI fixes coming within the next iteration of Remake, but there are many ways that we could implement co-op to work in this game. So with that being said, let's get into this video. In Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1, the game forces you to switch characters in order to build their ATB up. Even passively, the character that you are controlling will always generate faster ATB than the other two. Since I was a child, I always wished that Final Fantasy VII had the abilities for co-op, because many of my friends would take turns watching each other play the game at each other's houses. Now, Final Fantasy IX attempted this and allowed each controller to control two party members, but it didn't work out so well. But nowadays, our programmers are much better and this could work even better. The co-op mode would not be a forced element and it could be entirely optional, meaning that solo playthroughs would not be affected or forced into any of these mechanics if they choose not to, but the co-op could very well work as a separate entity. Such as the difficulty would spike up much harder since all party members would be building up ATB about at the same rate. Enemies could have more health or more overall defense to create a more challenging experience and even have more mechanics. Or the players could even build ATB slower. There are many different negatives they could implement to balance the gameplay overall, guys. So no worries on that front. In the next generation on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X, if they go that route, the maps would have potential to be much bigger, especially since the party is going to be in an open world. So you could imagine they'd be able to spread out a little bit more, giving each other a little bit more space to work with rather than the simple hallways from Remake Part 1. I would imagine this could be the case too since we are in an open world. There would also be the balance of how materia functions would work too. The host of the lobby would give the other two party members access to the host materia from the host story point. We can't transfer over other players' materia from different playthroughs. However, if they were to make this a thing, they could probably just do a level sync, which would sync the materia to fit the host's current placement in the story. Final Fantasy XIV does this a lot when you are trying to play a game with your friend or run a dungeon with them, and you are a few levels higher than them. They will level sync you to a suitable level to where you can play with them. However, a lot of your abilities that you would get at a higher level, you would be only able to access those that qualify for those current levels that you've been synced to. That makes any sense. When it comes to the aggro in Remake Part 1, it is based solely on whoever the player is controlling. That is who the enemy will focus. There is no threat being generated at all. It's just player based. But if they rework the system to focus on a threat system that has the enemies focusing on one target while also giving that player the ability to taunt, they could make this mode function even better. Imagine a friend controlling Barret could taunt and hold aggro, and then they could block and mitigate incoming damage while Tifa and Cloud focus on back attacking enemies, or Aerith rains down hell pressuring or staggering enemies, or even healing Barret. This would be a fun element to explore in a second playthrough after beating the story, so we can enjoy it again with friends and generate more challenges too. For co-op in the story, the distance from where the party can be away from each other would be noted. Say for example, if a member gets too far away, there's an indicator that tells them that only 23% of people that watch and love these videos are currently subscribed. Guys, being a subscriber is totally free and helps support the channel out a ton. We are ramping up our content and looking forward to starting Final Fantasy Tactics next week. We finished Final Fantasy VI and I was amazed and definitely have added that game into my top 3 on my all-time favorite RPGs list. Fantasian has just dropped recently on all iOS devices, and I will be sprinkling some Fantasian streams in there for you guys to enjoy. So subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of that stuff coming your way. But seriously guys, for co-op in the story, the distance of where the party can be away from each other would be noted. Say for example, if a member gets too far away, there is an indicator that tells them to turn around, but this distance could be quite far as to not intrude on each player's exploring. The level and map design could heavily play in on this, but we will have to wait and see what exactly can next gen provide us as far as flexibility goes. Hopefully it won't be as intrusive or annoying as when you cannot access certain areas in Remake or backtrack because story says no. We still don't know whether party members will be preset and part of story scenarios or if we can fully customize them like in the original game. I would love to be able to fully customize them and I hope that comes back into the fold, but of course, the variety of dialogue nowadays compared to the 90s is a very tough task to fill. However, not all hope is lost for me personally. In Remake Part 1, dialogue played a huge part and was heavily explored on looking at NPCs. There is no reason for any of them to have that much dialogue and amount of depth to them. I love the world building, but the effort that they put into that makes me think that if we had the ability to have our own custom parties, that they would go the extra mile to give each character combination their own unique dialogue for it to change depending on who else is in the party with them. A super daunting task I can imagine, but I'm sure Square would be up for the challenge seeing as how far they took the NPC voice options. We also talked about Square allowing us to be able to make parties that don't feature Cloud always as the main party member, which many of you guys don't like that idea, but this would still retain Cloud in cutscenes, especially since they are all traveling together. Maybe every cutscene could be the focus of Cloud's perspective regardless of whatever co-op options you have. But the other characters in the party would play minor parts or fill in scenes just fine. However they decide to go about this, I know it would be hella appreciated by all fans. I mean, just imagine having a party of Red 13, Yuffie, and Barret. I can already tell that is going to be the most funniest party in regards to dialogue with one another for sure. I am hoping that is a party we get to witness. Staggering enemies was a fun mechanic that they had for part 1 and a very important one when it comes to boss fights and regular fights and just overall the battle system. But if co-op were to be a thing, I could see it being a harder state to get enemies into, such as the pressured state or the staggered state itself not lasting as long as it normally would on a solo mode, meaning your coordinated attacks with your teammates would have to be precise in certain ways to give more of a challenge. This would fall into the harder difficulty category that comes directly with co-op mode. Of course, this is all relating to story. My pitch is how these things could fit within the campaign of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 and going forward. But of course, if they don't decide to implement this into story, then I definitely could see co-op being a thing or an unlocked mode after beating the game, and it being separated and all designed for VR training. This would put less stress on the devs for unique character dialogues and interactions, and this would also be a separate entity that many people who like the solo campaign for themselves don't have to participate in. But co-op VR could very well provide for some epic replayability. Think about how crazy it would be to tackle the hardest challenge with friends or members on stream, aiming for speedrun records while also having Square come out with more VR challenges as the months go on. This could hold us over for content for years, especially if they did this correctly. This would also not require much of an overhaul comparing to putting the co-op into the main story. Out of all the possible options, I could see VR co-op most definitely being a thing if they decided to implement co-op in the first place. I felt that way immediately in part 1 when we got to chapter 17 and we could choose which party member we want to attend the VR trainings with. The materia would and be compiled of our own from our own playthrough, and the scaling of enemies could still apply while ATB generation is being normalized or reduced. And that wraps it up for this video, guys. Hey, what can I say? I am a dreamer. I know this is not a high possibility, but if the option isn't there, and eventually when I make my own games, these are just ideas that I'd love to put out there to explore for my own endeavors. And also, I'd love to be a consultant for Square in regards to Remake. Who knows? Maybe one day that very well could be a thing. Fantasia is pretty dope, guys. Have any of you guys had a chance to play it yet? If not, I definitely recommend it, because if you are a Final Fantasy 7 through 9 fan and missed that era of RPGs, you should definitely check it out, because they called all those feelings back. It's exactly what I felt when I was playing it, and you know what I mean when you lucky iOS bastards get a chance to actually fire it up. And shoutouts to Night Sky Prince for shouting out Fantasia non-stop. I will join you in that campaign, my friend, for promoting and getting everyone to try it out. It is definitely worth a play, guys. Currently, I'm playing it on a borrowed Apple TV with a PlayStation 4 controller. PS5 controller support is coming soon. They're going to be updating that in a few months, hopefully. Also, thank you again, John Eric Bentley, for joining the channel and having an amazing discussion with all of us. Guys, if you missed that video, I suggest you go back and check it out, because we had an amazing one you won't want to ignore. And John will be coming back onto the channel in the future, so look forward to more from us in that regard. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you are new. More Final Fantasy VII Remake videos are coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. My name is BltzZ, and thanks for watching.